Because it doesn't matter like how many monsters I'm fighting simultaneously as I now die because I got CC'd. Are these the most CC heavy fucking wolves that have ever existed? Dear Wolf. But no, Sirach. There are people purporting that you can manipulate the seed by changing groups until you get good RNG to get higher drop rates. I also believe that. Well, this sucks out loud. I'll just tank it. My hand is tired. Am I currently testing something with Bloodlance? Yeah, the build's viability. Oh, I mean, yeah, he can't physically kill me. Okay. Would swapping out to Blood Golem make these fight? No, Golem would be very bad. Could be faster if Flesh Eater uptime was maintained. Sure. There was one of the other issues, Garm, was making sure to keep up blood begets blood. That was a thing I was kind of thinking about the whole time. The last thing I want to do is look at just putting on a better weapon.
Magic in all things. Let me show you.
The Nor ACW, thank you for the follows. Masterwork. How much do I have? 6. Sure. Have a good night, McKenna. Let's just very quickly get rid of some junk. Because you know I'm going to get my... you know I'm going to get my reward at the end. would you say is stronger in season 4, Bloodlance or Bone Spear? Bone Spear is currently clearing further than Bloodlance. Have I eaten? I ate some chips. Let's do... Speedyism, thank you very much for the $50 donation on YouTube. Thank you so much, man. That's mighty kind of you. I mean, that's actually insane of you. Thank you, man. Do I have a Bone Spear guide? I do not personally have one. I should probably try Bone Spear after this. I will say, being basically unkillable feels really good. Like, unless you're just like silly and you don't do anything, like you just don't move. Being basically unkillable feels pretty good. Now I can order a proper meal. Yes, thank you. Ooh, it's raining big hard now. Oh, I did need to check intelligence, I guess. So, lightning is cracked.
You subscribe to a bad content.
Why is it still hitting me? Hello?
You're a real one.
Habib, thank you very much for the prime. Hey, Electric Shock? Can you kindly fuck off? Thank you. There is something wrong with the Shock Lance and Electric. I know we've said this now 1,000 times, but there just is. And the developers need to say it out loud that they're looking at it, because it's so clearly the outlier. Damage is 2x effective for damage over time. Tried playing minions? I recommend Blight to start. And then like Bone Spirit. Hey, game. New mini branch expansion? Yes. Very exciting. And we just launched Elden Ring. We've actually launched like a bunch of stuff on Maxroll recently. We're basically just, if you play video games, Maxroll will cover it. What do I think is the best Necro currently? Minions. What minion build? Shadow Mages or Shadow Golem. They're basically the same thing. There's almost no difference between them. All right, we have 7 minutes to kill this boss. Sea Hag? Nope. Why would it ever be anything good? Oh. Can I do it in 4 minutes? Does that mean that Brotato is coming to max roll? Brotato does have a does have a pretty involved game system, but Jorb's already has explained all the stats. I don't know what value we would get from doing it on max roll as well. That's just 4 minutes of my life for that. Okay, so the two-handed scythe was not the answer. How do you make this do better single target damage? Is it possible to deal more damage with mages? It is not. Mages are just bad. Let me take that back. You can run Bone Spear mages. It will be fine. It does not do more damage than plain Bone Spear. So, what do you do? What do you do to make this do more damage? Oh, I have to die. Out a golem, but I can't scale a golem's damage. Minions don't overpower. We've established that the answer is don't not build into overpower. Because you just can't. Realistically, you just can't. Don't not. Don't not. Don't not's pretty good. Don't not. Blood Artisan's Curus, not actually bad idea. Friend. 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 How make Bone Spirit do damage? How make Bone Spirit do damage?
fashion this into something exquisite.
Hello. This will be your last stupid mistake. Sorry. This will be your last stupid mistake.
I had... I had a wild amulet. Oh my god, did I get rid of it? I might have had the perfect amulet for this at one point. Eh. My Avulsion uptime is shit. Then
There will be endless.
See some steel you need?
does it well.
All right. All right. Runewords tomorrow? Oh, hard no. Runewords would not be like a seasonal thing, I don't think. Well, the major issue with Runewords as a concept of a seasonal thing, it's like when you go to non-seasonal, what happens to the Runeword? It obviously goes away, right? If Runewords are going to come to the game, they would be like a permanent addition. How does this help my single target damage? I'm gonna generate a blood orb once, like I'm gonna proc this armor once every 6 rotations on the boss. Hey guys, how'd y'all get me to think that this would fix my single target damage? This guy looks horny. YouTube chat never change, man. Y'all are fucking crazy. So first off, my clear speed here has just been slower. So that's fucking rough.
You have to understand how things are up here.
So y'all want something like this. And then swap to Army of the Dead.
Magic is neither good nor evil. How may I help you?
Now that couldn't be me, boss. You want me to do Army of the Dead and then wait and then eat the corpses and then Bloodlands for a bit just to do a Bone Spirit? I could just cast Bone Spirit. That's not a Bloodlands build. All right, this is the last bad thing I'll do. Have I tried Endarials yet? I have not. I do not own an Endarials. I went and tested Doombringer. That does 10 million fucking damage. I am not where are you getting 50 million damage bone spirits out of this? There's a campfire chat tomorrow. We got a hot fix today. But you can't make the proc overpower. You can't make the one that comes out of the chest overpower. More than 3% of the time. Who said 50 million damage to me? Which one of y'all said that? What up, Hog? So the Blood Lance is not meant to do damage. You want me to just fully invest in Bone Spirit and just use all this stupid shit just to proc it? Oh man. No, I know. I do properly remember the conversation that happened. I just want to be aggressive. This is so fucking nothing. I think the fun in the game is just playing my own optimized build and just kind of trying stuff. Absolutely, that is super duper fun. It needs to be changed. My build can't clear tier 100. This is the build. Worst part is I could go clear tier 100 with this. Well, no, you're missing the fact that my Blood Lance was doing 20 mil. Hey, leave me alone. Whereas this only doing 7. All right, let's put real gear back on. Let's go clear a tier 100 and let's make a build guide video. It is 9:15. All right, we gotta do this fast. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. Oh, core skills don't do damage this season, not realistically. Bone Spear kind of does. Oh. It's stupid. What up, Ice? We're attempting all different build types and combos. Yeah, no problems though. So that's like, I mean, what else? Well, first off, like, what else am I doing? But also, like, I don't think it's really interesting unless you kind of explore it fully. Because if it just works, it just works. And you're like, oh, sick, it just works. But if not, then you're like, oh, what do I do? Que paso?
Wonders of Sanctuary.
Rathmos.
Impeccable.
And then I will eat dinner. 9:17. Okay. Hey, why didn't Grasping Veins grab anybody? Y'all notice that? Why is Grasping Veins not grabbing people? Hello? Hello? I did not equip anything with Tendrils Duration now. That one grabbed people. Okay, good. Bloodlance is OP. Dude, it is. Don't try to go past tier 100, but before that, it's pretty good. What's max pit with this build? Maybe 110. Like, if somebody is just a better player than me and has better gear than me and is more patient than me with GAs, 110. It's my max pit general right now, 110. I have not been pit pushing because I actually haven't been building out builds to pit push. That's why I started building out Bone Spirit to actually pit push, and now I'm playing a Bloodlance build. I don't know how I got here. We need the 2 hours later. Stop crowd controlling me for a second. Holy shit. Just please, for a second, stop crowd controlling me. Do I accept party invites? No. I don't know what that question means. I want to prove that it was so bad that I had an excuse to empty out my stash of blood gear. Play together? Ah, I got you. No, I don't. It's not really beneficial for me to test things in parties. At least until we get that new co-op content in the expansion. GA stands for Greater Affix. Can I just tank these, by the way? Sure can. Alrighty. Oh, sorry. Maybe Bloodlance isn't as bad as I thought it was. No, I'm just kidding. The blood builds are still absolutely screwed. Now, luckily, the pit content has become easy enough, and you can stack on enough power to these types of builds to be able to clear the hurdle that a lot of people generally consider to be the minimum bar of, like, quote-unquote viability in Season 4, and that's pit tier 100. It may take you a couple more minutes than most other builds, but you can definitely do it. The other upside of the build guide that I'm about to show you is that it gets to use all those cool uber uniques that you just generally can't fit into your other builds. And on top of that, gets to use even more uniques than that, just in case you're a big fan of things like Banishlord's Talisman and Blood Moon Breaches. But other than that, it's incredibly tanky. You can basically just ignore every single effect in the game as long as it's tier 100 and below. And obviously this type of build can go out and clear any other content type that you're looking to do. So let's go ahead and talk about the Bloodlance Necromancer. Why I still think it's like generally pretty trash, and I'll go ahead and show you a very quick clip from stream of me attempting to fight a tier 100 boss for a solid 10 minutes straight and still not killing them before the end of the timer. But before I just blast you all with what I don't like about the build, let's go over like the skills, the aspects, the gear, the Paragon, etc. I'll have a build planner down to everything down below. You can go ahead and check out the timestamps as well, but let's go ahead and get into it. The primary conceit of the build is that Bloodlance will eventually overpower, and with the additional bonuses to our Book of the Dead, the sacrificial aspect depending on what your gear setup looks like, and the overwhelming amount of items that say if you overpower do a megaton of damage, and we're going to try to enable this system as much as possible. So we'll start with the skill tree just very, very quickly. I'll touch on the multipliers and the things that you need to know. No generator on this build, obviously Bloodlance with overpower and perfectly balanced for the additional damage. Hued flesh to be able to generate corpses because we do need to use Flesh Eater and corpse consumption in general, as well as corpse tendrils as often as possible. Blood Mist with the ability to generate corpses. Obviously we're going with Fueled by Death here. Down into Decrepify with Abhorrent Decrepify, Amplify for the damage, Death's Embrace for the damage in the DR. We're going with Corpse Tendrils, and it applies Blood Orbs as opposed to applying Vulnerable. Being able to generate a ton of Blood Orbs helps tremendously with your uptime and your just overall damage output against the packs of monsters. And it turns out, since this is a pretty slow build, clearing through the pit itself faster is a huge overall increase in your efficiency. On top of that, generating the blood orbs throughout the boss fight allows us to kind of proactively heal, as well as slightly increase our overpower procs. We only need 2 points into Gruesome Mending because you can't overheal the blood orb trigger on our key passive, and we already are meeting the amount of healing necessary, considering we have over 60,000 maximum life when we consume an elixir. Yes to Coalesce Blood, yes to Tides of Blood. 2 points into Drain Vitality with Bloodlance is more than enough to generate enough Fortify to be able to add. 2 points into Drain Vitality is more than enough Fortify to stay at cap Fortify even after taking some damage. Building down to last tree, we need the crit chance from Inspiring Leader. All of our sacrificial both Standalone and Memento Mori, as well as Bone Storm with crit chance, and then Rathma's Vigor. For people who've never played a blood build, basically Rathma's Vigor says that you're going to overpower once every 12 seconds, but if you pick up a blood orb, reduce that cooldown by 2 seconds. This means that against a pack of monsters, you should basically overpower like 3 to 4 times in a row for very quick damage application, and then as they very slowly get whittled down, you will no longer proc this as quickly, but allows you to walk into most fights with an overpower as well, just be able to snipe things. The gear looks ridiculous, and it's because it is ridiculous. Blood builds have always had hilariously high requirements for their gear to be good, but what I like about this build, and this is the weirdest way of upselling a build at this time, but quite literally I am using 3 different Uber Uniques, so if you've been getting them or crafting them or using them, you're like, hey, I got that Doombringer, but I couldn't use it, this is the build to do it. Can't find a place to put your Starless Guys? This build loves Starless Guys. Do you love Shaco? We love Shaco. So let's go ahead and go over the rest of the things that you need to understand. Shaco is just phenomenal for the resource gen, the cooldown reduction, and the maximum life, as well as the DR and the ranks to Bloodlance is a huge overall damage increase. For the armor, we want essence per second to be able to stay basically at permanent essence uptime. So once Starless Guys has permanently procced, we are at 100% essence the entire time. And if I were to successfully overpower with our Bloodlance, we are still able to maintain permanent uptime on essence here. But that does mean you need an essence roll here and on here. For the rest of the gear, since we're using 2 different uniques, we need both armor and total armor here to be able to cap out. And then you either want maximum life or intelligence. The more intelligence, the easier to cap your resistances, because you'll notice we don't have a lot of intelligence on this build. So it is actually kind of hard to cap res without that stat there. Heart and Bones for more DR, and then lucky hit chances here. You would probably actually want to put on crowd control duration as opposed to these additional lucky hit chances. Hard CCing enemies too quickly causes them to become unstoppable, and when they are unstoppable, it's harder to stay safe from them. So I would actually want crowd control duration anywhere where you see lucky hit chance to apply a crowd control. For the gloves, Bloodlance, crit chance, and then either attack speed or maximum life. Here you're going to be tempering on blood attack speed. Blood has terrible tempers, and I mean that. They have basically no good tempers. We don't need additive damage because we're an overpower build, and we have over 2,000 overpower additive damage before taking into account any other additive damage that we currently have. So blood attack speed, again, crowd control duration here. This is where you're going to put Rathma's Chosen for the 50% increased attack speed after overpowering. Blood Moon Breaches for the giant multiplier whenever you successfully overpower a cursed target. They also have a huge amount of damage reduction on them. And the additional ranks to amplify damage further increase our damage as well. Add on the maximum life roll and they're just kind of super GG for the build. For the boots, I went with maximum life, essence per second, and movement speed. Again, you would want crowd control duration and then additional movement speed. I currently have concussive strikes on here. This does allow us to, again, add on another damage multiplier once we stagger a boss, because once a boss is staggered, they're considered dazed, and we gain a 20% damage multiplier against them here. I'm not necessarily sold on it. You could just put on Slaughter for movement speed, or even Wind Striker for movement speed if you're getting hit a lot, but I do like the addition of this, just a little bit more CC, a little bit more damage. Then we have the big daddy here, Doombringer. Yes, you could be putting in Then we have the big daddy here, Doombringer. The more crits that you can get on maximum life, the better. We don't really care about damage, core damage, or the chance to heal. You only want to crit on maximum life. This thing alone, I'm currently at 64,000 life, is representative of a whopping 19,000 life on here, and I only have a single crit on it and not even a greater affix. Absolutely prioritize that. Now, you'll notice that I have emeralds in here. Oddly enough, you can just put in rubies for additional overpower. I just forgot to swap these out because I was testing a ton of stuff today, and I'll include that at the end of the video about all the different things that I tried out. For the amulet, obviously Banished Lord's Talisman, another 60% damage multiplier whenever we overpower and crit. Since we have 100% chance to crit, this will always trigger. You would like to crit on your core skill and then your resource gen, or your critical strike chance if you're not capped yet. For the ring, I went with attack speed, critical strike chance, and then a single roll of lucky hit chance to be able to apply vulnerable. This isn't good enough, but it also is. It's our only way of applying vulnerable if you're going to use corpse tendrils instead of generating vulnerable, but instead generating blood orbs. This is kind of your only way to do it. I have seen people mess around with like bone prison. We actually, like, I don't super hate that concept. I don't think it's good enough, but I don't super hate it. So if you're playing around with that yourself, like, feel free to continue. More blood attack speed and then resource generation here. Because we're using Starless Skies, you don't really want resource reduction. Like if I were to show you how much resource this costs me, it cost me a whopping 8 essence per cast. So we actually want resource gen to make our essence per second stronger, as opposed to continuing to double down on a stat that we already have a huge amount of. Ring of Starless Skies brings that crit chance as well as a huge damage multiplier, which is sadly missing on blood builds. And then again, basically manages all of your resource cost issues that you could possibly have. Since we're using a unique amulet, that becomes even more important here. And I'm already using GA essence per second rolls here without crits on them. So to not use this, you would need a really powerful ring with essence cost reduction on it, more attack speed, more crit chance, and then you would be able to fit on another aspect. Most notably, sacrificial aspect would probably be your best option. Lastly, we are using the offhand here. The cooldown reduction is just going to be nice for Bone Storm uptime. You'll notice I've also put Bone Storm duration on the weapon because Blood doesn't have good weapon tempers at all. We have Blood Lanced duration. That's nothing. That literally does nothing for the build. So Bone Storm duration is cool here. If you were going to actually put on, for your offensive, we actually want more blood skill attack speed. I just failed to hit it, so I guess I have damage while fortified. Here you're going to want more crit chance, more maximum life, and you can either do like essence cost reduction or cooldown reduction. I have intelligence here, it works pretty well. And this is where we're going to be putting on Gore Quills. Gore Quills is definitely the best option. I tried out Hungry Blood, I tried out Gore Quills. Gore Quills by far is the best one. It picks up all of your orbs for you, which means during the fight you can proactively overpower as opposed to picking them up later. It also helps with healing throughout the entirety of a fight. Definitely use Gore Quills here. For the Book of the Dead, we're sacrificing Skirmishers for crit chance, we're sacrificing Bone for an additional overpower multiplier, and then Golem for crit damage. Now, if you have your crit chance figured out and you're finding it really hard to stack res, you can throw on Defenders until your gear is good enough to support it. This is not what you want to use in the end game, but it would be a good stopgap if you're having issues. Now for the Paragon, this is slightly unoptimized, very specifically because my gear does not have enough both armor and resistances to currently get another board's worth of maximum life. I'm going to have a build planner that you can just look at very quickly, but for people who want to see it in the build guide itself in the video, We're using Sacrificial in our first board. Building up into Blood Begets Blood, we are also building into Amplify. This will increase the magic nodes around here, which is where we get a ton of additional overpower damage. Building left over into Scent of Death, this is where we're going to be putting Dominate. You do not care about maxing out the bonuses of Dominate. We just want to hit that minimum so that we can get that 12% damage multiplier after overpowering a target. Remember, in just overpower additive damage, I have over 2,000 on the build right now. Maxing out this thing is not going to move the needle at all. Building up after into Bone Graft for the essence, and then we also want to be picking up Tenacity. Make sure to hit the minimum requirements for Tenacity. It's the biggest maximum life node that you can pick up. Building over into Bloodbath, this is where we're putting Corporeal just for another 1.1 for physical damage. Yes, blood is physical damage. Then we're going to build up into the maximum life nodes over here. Going to build down to the Bloodbath legendary node, and then very specifically because again I need resistances, I build over into Suffused Resilience. Normally you would not pick up these nodes here. In the Flesh Eater node, this is where I'm putting Gravekeeper. I kind of don't like Gravekeeper here. I just don't have that many corpses against bosses because you want to be eating them for Flesh Eater, and maybe Gravekeeper is not the best option. If you're somehow generating enough corpses to get the biggest benefit out of this, continue to use it, but I don't think in practice I actually was, so if you see something different in the build planner, that's why. And then lastly, you'll also notice me building down here, all the way down into Wither, just to pick up this maximum life node right here. You can just barely reach to this node with the points that you should have left over if your armor and your resistances are managed by stats on your gear. Now let's go ahead and talk about all the other things that I tried. So one, I did go ahead and try a big two-handed weapon. The idea here is that I was going to further increase the base damage that we're able to do. I would also then be able to get big double effective rolls of both on the attack speed and on the Bone Storm duration. You notice here I have 74% Bone Storm duration, meaning I would have a whopping 17 seconds. Basically, this should be up whenever you need it. And then the other benefit was that even though it's a big two-handed weapon, which would be slower, you could put Rathma's Chosen onto it and get an insane amount, fully increase cap 2 of your attack speed, meaning that all of your blood skill damage, meaning that all your blood skill attack speed would also completely max out cap 1, and you'd be at 200% attack speed. It worked fine. It wasn't my favorite way of approaching the build, but it definitely wasn't terrible. So it is a good enough option if you do not have a Doombringer. But I do think that ultimately Doombringer ends up eking it out. That additional like 12,000 maximum life, you definitely feel it. It also reduces your overpower damage, etc. So I think that this is just kind of better off, but you could definitely do a two-hander to start. You'll also notice that I went out and built just like a regular legendary amulet and played around with what was possible when you used something like this as opposed to Banishlord's Talisman. Why would you not use Banishlord's Talisman? Well, it's only going to increase the critical strike damage when you also successfully overpower, meaning that it triggers like 3 times per rotation. When you think about Bloodlance, you have to think about the fact that your first cast will typically be an overpower. Then every 6th cast, you will trigger another overpower, which will also make a Blood Orb. The Blood Orb will typically make Rathma's be able to trigger sooner. And when you are sitting at a whopping 8 essence cost, when I have Ring of Starless Skies fully enabled here, that requires 34 casts before we trigger Banishlords to give us a free cast. So it means that you could expect 1 every 6 rotations. And what it all comes down to is like, hey, maybe there's a world where just stacking on normal multipliers, just normalizing your damage, getting an additional aspect slot to be able to add on Sacrificial, which represents anywhere between like 30 to 40% damage increase on the build, depending on how you move around your stats. That means that you could also then put like Rathma's Chosen up here for 75% attack speed. I tried out a lot of different combinations of these things. Ultimately, I didn't feel like it performed better. While yes, I had slightly more normalized damage across the board, you cannot scale your blood damage without scaling overpower. And you just have to accept the fact that you're basically going to overpower once every like 3 to 4 attacks. So your overpower is effectively 1/4 effective. If you want to think about the math of it, overpower divided by 4, that's how much your rotations worth of damage you'll get out of it. And it turns out that if you do that math, it's still just strictly better to build fully into overpower as opposed to worrying about the pittance and the small little doodly damage that you do with your non-overpower attacks. But I tried it. The other thing that we tried was Blood Artisan's Cuirass. Now, there is absolutely a build where you fully build into scaling your Bone Spirit's damage. You just use your blood tools to generate blood orbs. I think it's just strictly worse than building fully into Blood Artisans and just blood misting through to pick up stuff, but that's just me. If you're living your life and you're enjoying playing it this way, chase your bliss. But just putting Blood Artisan's Cuirass onto this build, moving around aspects so we didn't lose, survivability, and then having to drop Blood Moon Breaches so that we can get enough armor onto the build, you were able to see like 10 million damage Bone Spirits coming out for free, and that would trigger 2 to 3 times per group of monsters. Even when I added on the title aspect and then Blood Wave against a boss, it just kinda did nothing, because losing out on all of that overpower scaling damage to gain 10 to 20 million damage Bone Spirits once every rotation or two of Bloodlance ended up being a net DPS loss, but we did try it. It didn't work, but it was worth the gimmick. And now, just because I figured I wanted to touch on this, because I think it's something that gets lost in translation, most notably whenever you're looking at a tier list and then trying to understand why your experience that is like good with the build gets rated poorly by other people. I put together this build on a complete whim. I mostly just wanted to get all the blood gear out of my stash space because it's been using up a huge amount of space, and to be able to most appropriately and accurately tier out these builds, you gotta go and play them, and you gotta try to play them at the highest pit tiers possible, the highest challenge possible. Bloodlance, great for speed farming. Bring it into Helltide, have a great time, hold down Bloodlance the whole time, you'll never have to stop, you'll kill everything, it'll be great. Doing Nightmare Dungeons, it'll be fine. It'll blast through every single monster in front of you. Pit tier 100, again, it ain't fast, but you just hold down right click and you just will kill everything. I said that Blight was the honey badger of Necros. Nah, turns out blood builds with their 60,000 plus maximum life, unstoppable amounts of fortify, a huge amount of DR on their build, will do just that. They will ignore every single thing. It's when I tried to walk into a tier 110. Something that the majority of meta builds, even Sever right now, is blowing past. And the build physically could not output enough DPS to kill the boss in 10 minutes. That's the problem. That's why blood builds are rated so poorly. It's because they have never been able to successfully do single target damage, except during the time of the Seneschal, when you could basically just put on every single multiplier, ignore survivability entirely, just get massive, massive overpower multis, and then blow up bosses back then. But all of them had like 100 million life and just blew up no matter what skill you tossed at them. In the day and age of the pit, where monsters have billions of life, you can't do that. You can't overpower crit for like 20 to 30 million once every 6 casts and consider that a good build. The uptime on your damage, your overall DPS, your damage per cast is just too low to continue to scale. And the build doesn't have more ways of scaling. We have no good additive damage tempers to be able to put onto your gear. Yes, you could go make a rogue and temper on crit, I guess. Sure, why not? Remember that we already have thousands of additive damage from overpower, so even very slightly normalizing those first few casts will do nothing in comparison to that overpower damage. And it's mostly because the Blood Key passive doesn't work with anything other than overpowering. The best way to scale Bloodlance doesn't work with anything other than overpowering. Even your passive skills in your skill tree, one says increase blood damage, and the other one says you only get bonus damage when you overpower. Everything that Blood does is geared very specifically to overpowering, and because of that, there's nothing available to scale its base damage. Your options would be like Edge Masters for a 20% bonus, trying to maintain vulnerable uptime, completely cutting out the Blood Orb package. You could even do something as silly as trying to throw on Shadow Blight and then minions and aphotic, and then get uptime on blighted, and then use that as a multiplier. And then when you realize you've added on like 4 different systems that drastically reduce your survivability and your base damage, to then have a very short window buff where you get basically an overpower's worth of damage, it falls apart immediately. The only thing that you can do is overpower, and overpowering is just trash on the Necromancer. There's no other way around it. Our ability to output overpower and to scale overpower damage and to have overpower be relevant has been nerfed into the ground time and time and time again. I think mostly because other classes just overpower better and they turn out to be too powerful when overpower is good. So until overpower is changed in some way where we can either increase our base chance of doing it, or the Necromancer gets special additional ways of proccing it, or our skill tree enables us to build into something that isn't overpowering, this is the best I could do with the Bloodlance. I think that it peters out around like 105 comfortably. Maybe if you have perfect G8 gear with like triple crits on stats, you can do a 110. But I don't think it really gets better than that. And that's where I'm going to leave the build for now. Again, there's a planner down below. I hate being this down on a build, but I'd rather be honest based off my experience than try to upsell you on something that realistically doesn't continue to perform once you really try to test it. Let me know down in the comments what your experience has been. Do you just have something strictly better than this? I would love to hear from you. I would much rather put out a stronger build than a weaker build. So let me know. Give me your feedback. I'd love to hear from you. If you're brand new here, subscribe to the channel, toss a like onto it if you appreciated the video. Even if you didn't, maybe just do it anyways. It's free. It would help me out a ton. But as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that helped you to better enjoy the rest of your season, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. This is for YouTube, yes. This is a YouTube recording. Bloodlance build. Tormented Zir is dropping more loot than it should be, which is naturally increasing how many times you get good loot from it. Is there a current build that uses triple GA Ring of Sacrilegious Souls? Not a good one, but you can use it. Oh, I'm glad I just like don't have to look at this again though. That's pretty cool. And that like my misgivings weren't wrong. Are we gonna see Surge? We can see Surge tomorrow after the campfire chat. We could do Surge. I basically just go take those Surge gloves that I have that are actually kind of ridiculous. Shadow Mages can't fit Shaco onto the build, but it can fit Tyrael's. Is my max roll Sever build up to date? No, it is not. Nope. I have to pretty aggressively update that build. Where are those Blood Surge gloves? GA Blood Surge with crit and attack speed. Let's go, baby. I also did better than I thought it was going to do, which is pretty nice. But that's the end of the stream. Super late for me. Super late, 10 p.m. Haven't eaten dinner yet. Pretty bad. Yo, Rax is playing Elden Ring. Let's go. That's awesome. But who's playing D4? That's what I care about. Ciroc is. We're rating Ciroc, boys. Let's go. Thank you so much for all the support today. Thank you to just like everybody. Oh, we had 29,000 followers on Twitch. That's pretty sick. Thanks, y'all. But thank you for all the support today. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for the new subscribers on YouTube. Thank you for the new members. Appreciate y'all. Let's go give some rock some love. As always, well, actually, so before I say that, Campfire Chat is tomorrow at 2 p.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m., sometime. One of those 2 times. So we're going to be checking out that, obviously. I assume it's going to be wild. So we're going to have a lot to talk about. And then after that, we'll check out Blood Surge. As always, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, arrivederci, sayonara, so long, ciao, kapkun krap, sawadi, guten Abend, guten Nacht, hasta mañana, ciao. If I don't see you, have a great weekend. Much love to you. Be good.